Still continuing my trend of watching holiday videos till the end of January. Next up is Single All the Way, which was Netflix's answer to What If We Made Yet Another Allmark Christmas Movie, but make it gay? Like very gay. I'm talking director, writers, main leads, even one of the core side characters gay. And let me tell you this, I personally am quite happy with it because why should the straights get all the happy, family centered, cozy Christmas movies? Give us the tropes, give us the cliche, give us the friends to lovers, and give us the heartbreak as well. I was ready for all of it. And to be quite honest, this film, interestingly enough, delivered on all of that for me. Welcome everyone to Rumcom Gander Tuesday. For those that are like, hold it, Noria, today isn't Tuesday. Yes, I am sorry. I once again pulled a muscle in my back, which meant that for a larger part of yesterday, I was just lying on my bed, trying to not move too much. I swear, nobody warned me that in my 30s, my body would actively keep trying to wreck me every other day slash week. But I am feeling better now. Thanks for asking. And if any of you have suggestions on stretches I can do, because this pulling a muscle ish is becoming way too frequent for me, please drop them in the comments. Something else you can drop in the comments. Your movie recommendations for me to check out, because for those who are just finding my channel, all these series, Romcom Tuesday is a video series on my channel where I do a first time watch or a rewatch of rom-coms from the late 80s to the early 2010s just to see how well they hold up, especially with regards things that younger me might have missed back when they initially dropped. And what I can glean from them with my now adult and slightly cynical eye. At the moment, I'm focusing on holiday movies, but once it's February, we are moving to regular rom coms, starting with Is Not That Into You. God, I have not watched that film in so long. I legit can't recall the plot of it except the feeling I had of rage whilst watching it, which if younger me was so pissed at that film, I know that present me would be seething. But yeah, if you want to add to my recommendations list, drop your movie suggestions in the comments. Just check out my Romcom Ganda playlist first to be sure that none of the films you're mentioning or suggesting are ones I've already seen or covered. Do note that I have a style for my Romcom Ghana videos with my intro, then the synopsis, and finally my thoughts on the movie at the end. I do put in timestamps so you can navigate this particular video as you so choose. But before I get into the synopsis part of the video, however, I would like to say a quick thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, Single All the Way starts off by introducing us to the character of Peter, no last name. Or I don't think I caught them mentioning it in the movie at any point, and I was paying attention throughout. But if I missed it at some point per chance, please let me know in the comments. But as I was saying, we are introduced to the character of Peter, played by Ugly Betty's Michael Yuri, who seems to have the role of a social media strategist slash manager at an advertising agency in LA. Peter, we establish, is on set overseeing the shooting of a commercial as requested by his boss for a razor brand. Take note of this as this will be important later on. Anyway, after filming and informing the agent who had sourced him the models that they had used for the shoot, Peter mentions that he, his best friend Nick, who is played by Philmon Chambers, and his boyfriend, his new boyfriend, will be coming to a party that they are all going to be attending later that day. Peter is excited as this will be the chance to introduce said boyfriend, Tim, a cardiologist, to his friends for the first time, whilst at the same time he's fielding calls from his very large and very nosy family who express an active interest in his love life every holiday. And he's always been the one who returns to their home in New Hampshire single for the holiday. And so, for the first time in forever, now that he has a boyfriend during Christmas, Peter is excited to make the introductions. And when he brings it up to said boyfriend at the party, Tim is happy to come along with him to come visit his family. Of course, this is the point when Tim's pager beeps and he has to leave the party to handle a shift at the hospital. Peter, upon getting confirmation that Tim will be joining him on his trip back home, is happy to inform his family that he's bringing home a surprise, implying that said surprise could possibly be his new boyfriend. Unfortunately for him, however, before he can get around to celebrating, his best friend Nick, who created his own app to monetize his skills as a fixer slash handyman, available at the tap of a button, is doing his job at one of the residences that he had been called to when he happens to see Tim, Peter's boyfriend, who it turns out is married to a woman and they have kids together. This, as expected, leads to Peter breaking up with his cheating jackass ex, after which he begs and finally manages to convince Nick to come home with him, stating that they would pretend that after all of these years as best friends, they finally caught feelings for each other and are in love. However, before they can make their story known, upon arriving at Peter's family home, they are met with the news that Carol, Peter's mother, had set him up with a new spin instructor at the gym who it turns out is also gay. Peter is initially hesitant until Carol gets him to her gym after her class with the aid of Nick, and Peter meets James, played by the always gorgeous, breathtaking specimen of a man that is Luke Mafalahin. Peter, who is now very interested, ends up going on a date with James, one that he enjoys. Meanwhile, Nick, who is beloved by the family, finds himself alone with Peter's father, Harold, who mentions that he had always thought that Nick and Peter were going to end up together because they are perfect for each other, which to Harold is confirmed by the fact that Peter is at his happiest when he is with Nick. Nick, meanwhile, tries to wave that all away, even though we can clearly see that this affects him and he isn't as immune to his best friend as he tries to pretend that he is. At the same time, Peter's nieces, Daniela and Sophia, are convinced that Nick and Peter really are perfect for each other and make it their mission to try and get their favorite uncle together with the best friend he's loved for the last 8 years. Peter, who has zero idea that half of his family are firmly Team Nick and don't want him getting together with James at all, is having a grand time with James. They go Christmas tree shopping and even go skiing together. Although in both instances, Peter can't help himself and always manages to bring up Nick in the conversation with James. In the middle of the holiday, Peter ends up getting a call from his boss who informs him a couple of days to Christmas that they are abandoning the agreed upon Christmas campaign direction, the one that Peter had been working on, and demands that Peter figures something new out. Quick side note, when I say that this scene triggered me, I used to work in advertising, and for 10 years of my life, I spent my holidays with my phone in hand, panic clutching at my throat every time it rang or vibrated, because all it takes is one call or text to fuck up your holiday irrevocably. Hell, for the first 6 to 7 years of the time I worked through all the holidays, I'm talking Christmas, New Year's, Workers' Day, Easter, I did not have weekend. It was hell. So, yes, I might have had a small, tiny, minuscule panic attack when Peter got the text from his boss because it immediately threw me back into a dark, dark time. I absolutely did not want to remember. With his holiday about to be disrupted, Peter starts to panic, but Nick is as calm in the storm as he tries to calm him down. Meanwhile, Peter's twin nieces have gotten the rest of the family on board with their operation Get Peter and Nick Together until they realize that they are in love with each other and get together for real to be happy forever. Everyone, that is, except for their grandmother, Peter's mother, Carol, who is still fixated on James since she's the one who had matched him up with her son. With the twin suggestion in mind, Harold makes the suggestion that since Peter's boss wants real people in the ad campaign, not models, Peter can take pictures of Nick, who is gorgeous and stunning and beautiful and magnificent. And I'm sorry, can you all tell that I think that Philemon Chambers is the bee's knees? I mean, look at him. Isn't he stunning? My gods. Anyway, Harold suggests that Peter take pictures of Nick instead, thus creating that moment of romantic connection for his son and Nick, which works brilliantly as once again we get the revelation that both Peter and Nick are interested in each other, even if they don't want to voice it out loud. Plus, they look so cute and so good together. God. After their brief moment of connection is interrupted by James, who wants to take Peter on their third date, which Nick encourages Peter to go on. Sophia and Daniela corner Nick and get him to admit to having feelings for Peter, even as he's terrified of saying so because he isn't sure if his feelings are reciprocated. Peter arrives back home after turning down James's invitation to go up to his apartment with him. When he gets to his room, however, it is to find Daniela and Sophia already sleeping in his bed, which then forces him to end up sharing a bed with Nick to the girls' delight. The next day, the twins also speak with Peter and prod him into admitting that he too is in love with Nick, but his own fear is about ruining their friendship if their relationship doesn't end up working out. Now, whilst all of this is happening, there's the subplot of the town's Christmas pageant that is being coordinated by Peter's aunt Sandy, who is played by the icon, the legend herself, Jennifer Coolidge. I mean, did I scream, "Oh my God, it's Jennifer Coolidge," at my screen when she first stepped onto the screen in their family house on everyone's first night home? Yes, I did, because it's Jennifer Coolidge. And she brings her bit of physical, zany comedy and ham performance to the role as Aunt Sandy, who trains the kids in town and is barely managing to hold on to her sanity to get the Christmas pageant to turn out right on time. With help from Peter and Nick, however, they are able to pull it off, and the Christmas pageant is presented to rousing applause by the crowd. One such audience member, it turns out, is James, who shows up courtesy of Peter's invitation to him and sees just how well Peter and Nick get along. And we see from yet another outsider's perspective how good the two of them are together with each other. After the pageant, Nick finally comes clean to Peter and confesses that he's in love with him, always has been. Peter, however, who is still terrified of what them getting into a relationship will do to their friendship should it implode, doesn't respond to that, merely informs Nick that he intends to move back home to New Hampshire. Nick, who takes this as Peter rejecting him, packs up his luggage and prepares to return to LA. But on his way to the airport, he accepts his last job in town, which is to repaint the local hardware store whose owner is retiring and putting up the building for rent. Meanwhile, at the pageant, after a conversation with James, who helps Peter realize that even if he likes Peter and vice versa, they aren't compatible with each other, at least not the way in which Peter is with Nick. This is what gets Peter to realize that his fears shouldn't keep him from choosing the man he loves, who loves him back. And so he heads back home to go see Nick, but upon reaching the house, he finds the note from Nick, who informs him that he's headed back to Los Angeles. Peter quickly pulls up the airport departures list and races to the airport to try and stop Nick before his flight. But before he even gets out of town, he spots the rental car they had gotten for their stay in front of a store and walks in to find Nick, who, upon asking, states that he was planning on leaving, but he wanted to complete his last job first. He also informs Peter that he got him a Christmas present for the first time ever. The two of them don't really exchange Christmas presents in all the time they've known each other. And the present, it turns out, is that Nick rented the former hardware store from the owner and paid 6 months of rent up front. Like, that is love, y'all. So that Nick, who is a plant parent, can convert the store into a plant shop now that he intends to move back home. Peter, who is overwhelmed at just how much Nick loves him and supports him and vice versa, ends up confessing his feelings to Nick, telling him that he loves him too, and they both kiss afterwards. Nick, it turns out, was quite down for eventually moving to the small town as well, since he can run his business from anywhere. Plus, now that he's back to writing again, he can do that from anywhere too. The only reason why he did not suggest it was because he did not think that Peter wanted him to. Now, on Christmas Day, Nick hands over the first draft of his sequel kids book that Peter's nephews absolutely love. And upon doing so, he and Peter share the good news that they are all moving from LA to New Hampshire together, as they are now together. This news delights everyone. The end. Like I stated at the start of this video, I really did enjoy Single All the Way. Was it cheesy and predictable? Yes. Did I find myself outrightly guessing the lines of dialogue that characters were going to say even before they said it? Yes. Did that make it all seem a bit formulaic? Indeed. Did I, however, have an absolute blast with this movie? Absolutely. I think the thing about rom coms, especially Christmas slash holiday rom coms, is that a lot of them are overwhelmingly straight. And so to have a movie like this that is gay in all the best ways and at the same time is just your typical happy Christmas rom com makes me happy. We want, we need, we deserve stories like this. We got the Allmark treatment, you all, and it's gay, which is fantastic. Of course, the story is predictable because it's following the pretty popular trope that is Friends to Lovers. And maybe it's because in less than a week, this is the second Friends to Lovers film I'm seeing, the first being People We Meet on Vacation, of course. But Single All the Way had me both celebrating the Christmas cheer and the story of love and family at its core, but also at the same time, it had me thinking about the one part of Friends to Lovers that I never really considered, which is that whilst everything is all cheery and happy, when you take in the entirety of the story, the big picture of it, if you will, there's also the slight bit of heartbreak that is interwoven with the story. I often find my heart breaking for the time that has been lost, and the third party that's more often than not caught within the push and pull of the friends who end up as lovers by the end of the story. Because more often than not, there is always someone in the wing waiting on one of the characters in the friendship turned love situation. And I often find myself pitying that person. In People We Meet on Vacation, that was Alex's off and on again girlfriend, Sarah. In Single All the Way, however, it is the gym instructor that Peter's mother, Christmas Carol. I'm sorry, I 100% agree with Nick that that is a cool ass drag name for Peter's mom. Anyway, as I was saying, in Single All the Way, it is Jane, the spin instructor that Carol tries setting Peter up with, who is played by the ever brilliant Luke Mafallohan. And I'm sorry, a bit of diversion here, but every single time I saw Luke Mafallohan on my screen in this movie, it takes me back to the first ever show I saw him in, which was Brothers and Sisters, where he also plays a gay character. This time around, not a third wheel to a burgeoning relationship, but the boyfriend of Kevin Walker, second son of the Walker family. Like, am I the only one that remembers that show and Kevin and Scotty? Because every time I see Luke, the first name that pops in my head is often Scotty Wendell. Please tell me it's not only me. Also, now that I think about it, Hollywood did really have that thing of pushing hot Republican politicians caught in this romantic and sexual entanglement with women whose politics should ideally have made them incompatible with each other. Like there was Ray Fiennes who runs and wins a Senate seat in New York on a Republican ticket in Made in Manhattan. There's Rob Lowe, who plays Senator Robert McAllister, also a Republican, who dates and marries Calista Flockett's Kitty Walker in Brothers and Sisters, something that infuriates her family at first because they are all staunchly Democrats. And then there's, of course, Tony Goldwyn's Fitzgerald Grant in Scandal, who is a Republican president. Like, I don't know about you, but it reads as part of Hollywood's propaganda machine to give the Republican Party some rids by way of this attractive actor playing Republican politicians. But sorry, I digress. In Single All the Way, the person who is caught in the middle of Peter and Nick realizing their feelings for each other and admitting it and accepting it so that they can then get together is James. And whilst I appreciate the fact that the film doesn't attempt to vilify James in order to make way for Peter and Nick, because to be fair, we could already see that those two had so much chemistry together, all we were doing throughout the runtime was merely counting down the minutes until they realized it and got together. But I do still think that James, like a core staple character of the Friends to Lovers trope, is dealt the short hand of the stick by the narrative as expected. I mean, walk with me here. Let's look at the events of the film from James's perspective. Dude just settled full time in a small town. He's very much aware that he's one of the only few gay men around and has accepted his fate that his pickings will be very slim. But then comes Carol, one of the women who works out in the gym is a spin instructor at, and who tells him of her gay son Peter, who would be returning back home for the holidays. And she tells him right out of the bat that Peter is funny and smart and charming and attractive and single. And would he like to be set up on a blind date with him? To which James, who probably isn't holding his breath as he doesn't want his hopes dashed, agrees to the blind date. And sure enough, when Christmas time rolls around, Peter comes into town and James runs into him at the gym like Carol had arranged. And then he realizes Carol wasn't lying, nor did she exaggerate things about her gay son. He really is cute and funny and charming, and James is quite obviously interested with the hope that Peter is as well. They go on their first date, then second, and then third, and whilst they're having a great time together, James slowly realizes that hold up, Peter really seems to keep talking incessantly about his best friend Nick. Like in every conversation they have on every single one of their dates, Peter finds a way to bring Nick into it. Nick, who it is clear as well that Peter's family love like he's one of their own. And Peter keeps sharing the selfies that his family is taking with Nick to James, who is slowly realizing just how well integrated into Peter's family life Nick is, coupled with the fact that they've been best friends for the last 8 to 9 years after the most adorable meet cute story. And James is picking up that there is more to this than he initially thought. Then Peter goes on to inform James about the fact that whilst he and Nick have never dated, his family keeps trying to match him up with him because they seem to be able to see a connection with the two of them that they, Peter and Nick, don't see for themselves. Now, James takes all of this in, holding on to the thought that has started to sprout based off of what he can clearly sense is more, but he doesn't have full confirmation yet and continues to roll with things, even showing up to the Christmas pageant where Peter's nephews and nieces are playing a part of, and which Peter and Nick had helped Peter's Aunt Sandy set and put together. And he sees for himself what Peter's family had always noticed, the fact that Peter and Nick orbit each other in a way that is so natural to them, and that everyone who is on the outside looking in can clearly see the love that they have for each other. Like these two love each other and are in love with each other, and the only ones who haven't actually clocked it yet are Peter and Nick themselves. And when Nick comes out to Peter about his feelings for him, Peter, who is scared of messing up their friendship, doesn't immediately accept the confession. It takes a sit down with James, who points out that he too can see how well suited for each other Peter and Nick are, and him, that's James, urging the man he had probably at the start of the film had hoped that he will be able to have his happy ever after with, to go chase his one true love, for Peter to live and go do just that, which is how he and Nick end up having their happy and in love ending together. Whilst the end of the movie had me smiling like a loon, a part of me was still stuck on James, who, like I'd said, was totally a great guy. And if it were any other romance story, one that isn't predicated on the friends to lovers trope, he would have gotten his man, he would have stood a higher chance. But unfortunately, this film is about Peter and Nick finding their way to each other. And as the other man slash third wheel, the role that James ends up serving in the narrative is to help Peter and Nick, or rather mostly Peter, as is the one he is seeing, to help Peter find his love, understand and come to terms with his own heart, while James then hopefully heads over to LA to try and build a career slash following for himself as a celebrity trainer, which he would most likely succeed at because James is amazing at what he does and is also kind to boot. But at the same time, it is still quite sad. Something else that I do find a bit heartbreaking with the trope, which hadn't previously sunk in for me, is the time that is wasted on the fears and worries of wanting more but not wanting to ruin your friendship in the process, which we see is Peter's primary concern in the film. Now, I am not about to make the claim that this is the case for every single friend to lover story that is out there. This only applies to the ones that have spanned a number of years. In the case of Nick and James, almost a decade at this point. And yes, I know that as social creatures, we tend to evolve and grow into better and more mature versions of ourselves through our relationship, if we aren't being pieces of shit, of course. But it is not uncommon to work with the notion that our past relationships do contribute in some way into making us the people we end up becoming. And so, whilst I do not fault the time it took for Peter and Nick to get together, I still can't get over the fact that they had no idea that the other person wanted them as much as they did. And so, therefore, we see Peter get caught up in relationships with the absolute worst men who do nothing but break his heart over and over again, with the most recent one being a cardiologist who he really did like, only for Nick to accidentally discover that the dude was married, had a wife and kids, and had been lying and stringing Peter all along. Now, Peter kept kissing so many frogs, hoping that he would one day find his prince, even unaware that his prince was right there and had always been right there. Actually, no, he did admit to his nieces when they questioned him about his feelings for Nick that he always knew that he had been in love with his best friend. And the only reason why he hadn't pursued that relationship was his fear of losing his friend should their relationship had crashed and burned. And on one hand, I was screaming that, come on, Peter, Nick loves you, lose the fear and dive right in. But at the same time, after watching Single All the Way and letting Peter's fear sit with me, it hit me that is a very valid concern. This especially so because he and Nick are gay men. I think the fear of losing the friend if you turn a working friendship into a relationship that you aren't certain would work out is a common part of the trope. And whilst it still applies for heterosexual romances and stories, I think this fear hits even more for queer folks because we are big on building our community, finding our people and our chosen family within our friendships. And because ours is a smaller community compared to the larger populace, it is a valid fear to not want to lose that for the sake of attempting to see if a relationship could possibly work. If it doesn't, if it imploded and blows up in your face, you don't just lose a friend, you lose your family. And that is a heartbreaking, terrifying thought. And speaking of family, a quick side note or a quick digression. Now, whilst I love how supportive and loving Peter's family was in this film, I absolutely wanted to strangle them at times with just how little they respected his personal space and boundaries. But then it also was an accurate depiction of what it is like to be around your family during Christmas time, especially if they love you and you all are close. They meddle, they ask intrusive questions, they don't mind their business, they have no understanding or concept of personal space, and they are obsessed with seeing you married or settled down into a committed relationship with someone. So, yeah, the entire deal with them tracks in the movie. It still doesn't mean that I didn't find myself pausing the film every couple of minutes to die with embarrassment on Peter's behalf throughout this movie. Like, his family is ultimately cool and miles better than the family from the Stone Family movie, which still haunts me till date. Gods, I hate that movie. I hate that film. I hate it. Hate that family so much. Also, further side note, I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating at this point. Philmon Chambers is stunning, my God. I know he just got started on his acting career about 6 years ago, but I need more from him. Give me more gay rom coms with him in it. Thank you. But yeah, these are my thoughts on Single All the Way, and all in all, okay film that had me feeling a bit more sympathetic for the other man caught in the push and pull of the plot, but definitely an entertaining watch for me and so gay that it makes me so goddamn happy. Please share your own thoughts on the film with me as well in the comments. I would, as always, love to hear them, whether or not you agree with me. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels. If they sound like something you might potentially possibly be interested in, I have them both linked in the description. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.